behind each other's lap, please. Be great. Another seat right in the front row, right up on this guy's lap. Yep. Two-minute warning. Ooh. Ah. Getting the thumbs up, so we're going to get started. Oh, DerbyCon. Tell me this isn't the best conference in the world. Yeah? I had the absolute privilege of giving my very first InfoSec talk at DerbyCon 4, and it is my absolute pleasure to be here before you, my honor to be here before you. But you all are here for a naked look at my methodology. So, who am I and why do you care? Just really briefly, my name is Jason Lang. I am a proud TrustedSec consultant. I get to do fun things like red teaming and all kinds of fun shenanigans in my clients' networks. It's all authorized, of course. They sign the statement of work. But you find me on Twitter. My hobbies have absolutely nothing to do with information security because I got unplugged just like everyone else. So let's talk about what this talk is about, what this talk is not about. First of all, I want to give you an unrestricted look at one red teamer's consultant's methodology. Again, I'm a consultant. This is important to understand. And the reason why I'm putting this out there is because red teaming in the consultant world differs from red teaming in the internal world. And so if you're an internal red teamer, I need you to understand that your mileage is going to vary a little bit on this, okay? I'm going to do my best to make it as applicable as I can. However, understand that you're getting this from the perspective of somebody who has to operate on, say, from a red teaming perspective, save 6 to 8 weeks. Okay, as opposed to an internal red teamer, your operations can go a lot longer. All right, unfortunately, I don't have that luxury. That'd be fantastic, but it is what it is. Okay, to foster learning by example and failure, as well as to drop some handy stuff, at least stuff that I think is handy. But it's important to understand the perspective that this talk is coming from, and I'm just going to give you just a little bit of high-level context in terms of red teaming. In terms of target maturity, when I say red team, I'm not talking about a pen test, I'm not talking about a vulnerability assessment. I'm talking generally right about here. Okay, so when we talk about a red team, I am making a few assumptions about my target, a few assumptions about my client. And some of those assumptions might be, for example, that you already have centralized logging. If you don't have a SIM and you're just kind of, oh yeah, we want a red team because SysOMag says red team and it's all sexy. Hold on. Let's actually talk about what you have going, what you don't have going in your network, and then we'll see if you're in the right position for red team. And the reason why we do that is because we don't want you to waste your money. All right, red teams can be costly. All right, in fact, they are costly. Who am I kidding? So I do not want you to be wasting your money unnecessarily if you're not ready for that kind of engagement. Because the worst feeling for me as a consultant is to go into your network. There's all kinds of vulnerabilities. We get DA in the first day, and it's a 6-week engagement. We're just like, well, that's not the best use of your time or your money. Okay, so we're making certain assumptions here. But in terms of the difference between penetration testing, red teaming, things like that, there is a key difference. And the key difference is the ability to slow down. And I need to state that a little more emphatically because this was a difficult lesson for me to learn. I came from the pen testing world. First of all, how many of you red teamers? You red teamers? What? There's like 20% of you. How many of you blue teamers? Get out. Oh, dang. So I came from a penetration testing role, all right, where a pen test was a week long. You could send 3 phishing campaigns in that week and still get domain admin by the end of the week. And those days are long, long gone. All right, so now on a red team, now it's like command paralysis, where I'm afraid to type anything because I'm going to get caught. All right, so the point of this talk is to, give you some perspectives and some insights, some stories about failure and some successes, some things that you can use in your network. But why this talk? For those of you that raised your hand, and you're like, yeah, I'm already a red teamer. Why am I here? Why you care? Let me put it this way. Some of the best talks that I attend and the most valuable talks to me are the ones where I go and I'm not expecting to have, just this grand unveiling of knowledge. What I'm expecting is to pick up about 10 to 20% new knowledge. All right, if you're a red teamer and you've been doing this for a while, chances are the vast majority of what you're going to see in this deck you already know. Okay, there's a guy I was talking to, Odili. He was hoping this talk was about assembly. I'm sorry, man, it's not. Okay, but that's like, I don't know, next door or something. But if that is where you're at, I want to give you a little bit of hope because the point of this talk is to maybe steer you in a slightly different direction or maybe change how you think just a little bit about red teaming and give you an additional 5%, an additional 10% on top of your methodology that might make you a better red teamer. That's the whole focus of this, okay? All right, so what's the agenda? And what's it about? Well, I'm going to break this down very much like I would break down a standard red team engagement. We're going to talk about what happens before the engagement, the external portion, the internal portion, the social engineering, and then finally the reporting. Looks a lot like a pen test, but I'm going to break it down from a red teaming standpoint. By the way, these are not my animations, just FYI. All right, so every section that we're going to talk about, I'm going to include core principles. Whether it's the pre-engagement, whether it's the reporting, I'm going to give you red team core principles. This is not just a tools talk, okay? And one of the worst things I could do for you is just to drop a bunch of tools and then turn you loose. That doesn't help anyone, and it doesn't help your clients. All right, so from the standpoint of methodology, one of the best things that I can do is give you sound principles, or at least what I think are my sound principles. You might look at me and be like, you're all wrong. And that's fine, you're entitled to your opinion, and I have the microphone. So, number 1. Adversary simulation, not necessarily emulation. What's the difference? When I go into a target network, I'm simulating an adversary, which means, generally speaking, I can choose the path. Adversary emulation means I'm emulating APT XX, okay? And that's generally not, at least not in my opinion, the best value, because if I can simulate an adversary, I can tailor the attacks based on the vertical, I can tailor the attacks based on the client, I can tailor the attacks based on their maturity. I can do those things instead of being kind of locked in to this box of a specific adversary. Number 2, the goal is data, trophy systems, not domain admin. If the goal is domain admin, it shouldn't be. And if I ever go for domain admin on a red team, it is only as a stepping stone to get where I need to be. All right, one of the things I always ask during the kickoff is, give me a system, give me an application, give me some piece of data that means something to you and would put you in the news if it walked out the door. And that changes things. Nobody ever says domain admin to that, ever. Okay, so that is the goal. Emphasizing stealth over speed. There are certain tools that I do not use on a red team any longer. And it's not that they're bad tools, and I do call out certain tools in this talk. It's not they're bad. It's just that for the purpose of a red team, it's not the best fit. Maybe they're a little too fast. Maybe they're a little too well known. Maybe there's too many signatures, etc. Speed is not the emphasis. Stealth usually is the emphasis. All right, active defense, I do encourage it. So for example, if I'm going to send a phish, I want to see the actual response of my client. All right, and I will encourage it to a point. In other words, if there's like, all right, you're coming from TrustX IPs, we're going to block everything. And if they ask me for a status update, and I'm like, all right, I got in, my connection is coming from here, and they just shut everything down. Okay, hold on. We do need to suspend realism to a certain degree because I only have so much time here. All right, so you kind of have to bear with me in that part. The scope should be as open as possible, including physical. And I hear there's a lot. Physical isn't in my threat model. Well, maybe it should be, because it works really well. Okay, because lots of people get in with physical. It works. All right, and this is red team, not black team. We're not gonna kidnap you. So I mean, we're just talking about, we're just talking about getting a device in the network. It's not a big deal. Okay, so let's expand the horizons a little bit. It's gonna be fine. And then last, there should always be a tip your hand moment. And sometimes I'll ask my clients, hey, is it okay? I got persistent access. I achieved trophies 1 and 2. Is it okay if I start making some noise? No, we don't want to make any noise. Well, why not? Well, because I'm on the audit committee and the InfoSec committee doesn't know that we're doing this. And I'm like, okay, it would be better if we did, because that way I could kind of coach them through some of the incident response. We could take a look at that. I could report on it. It'd be better for you as an auditor. But anyways, there should always be a moment in the red team where I lay the hand down, everyone sees what's going on, we deconstruct the entire path, and then put together solid defenses based on that. All right, so before the engagement even starts, core principles on the pre-engagement cycle, I steer the client towards as open of a scope as possible, which I talked about. Clearly define what can be done versus what will be done. Nod your head to this. If you're a red teamer, you understand this pain, because what goes into the statement of work is something like, we may do things like physical intrusion, wireless, social engineering, internal testing, external testing, and the client looks at this and they're like, oh man, I get all this? Not necessarily. We will do what we have to do, including these things if necessary. And so I'm always defining that. In other words, if I call up a user, ask for password, single factor my way in through VPN, I don't have to phish you. I don't have to wireless test you. Okay, so I always define what I can do versus what I will do. Set an assumed breach target date. This, in my opinion, this is best practice. And the reason being is I've only ever had one client, where I've said, hey, can we talk about a date for when we cut over to assumed breach scenario? Assumed breach is really when we just pivot to an insider's perspective. And the client was like, no, you're going to fish and you're going to fish and you're going to fish until you can't fish anymore. And I'm like, all right, fine. So I spent 4 weeks fishing. I didn't get in, and I would hand them an empty report. I'm like, I fished, you won, congratulations, secure, check the box, move on. But they're not, right? And that's a problem. So we're always trying to set that assumed breach date, all right? And then I am not ashamed to admit this, all right? I ask for the client's lockout policy, not necessarily the minimum password length, okay? But I ask for their lockout policy. Well, why would I do that? All right, specifically those attributes, whether they're set in Active Directory, whether they're set via password filter, whether they're set via a third-party product, doesn't matter. I ask for that because chances are, actually, I'm not gonna say chances are, you brute force on a red team, right? You brute force on a red team, you brute force on a red team. What's the first thing we do? We look for Azure, we look for O365, we look for bootable surfaces, okay? And so understanding what their lockout policy is, you're saving them headaches and you're saving yourself a black eye. All right, in terms of like my average rate, if they refuse to tell me, I'll generally do about 1 every 4 hours. And maybe that's slow, maybe that's fast, I'm not entirely sure, and I'm trying to take it easy and not lock anyone out. You guys may go way fast, you may go way slower. But that's what I do, and I haven't had any lockouts, at least in recent memory. So, but again, on the kickoff call, I asked that question. All right, so the question, when does a red team engagement actually start? Is it on the kickoff call? Is it when you start your OSINT? The answer is, at least to me, is the minute I get the assignment email from my project manager. The very moment I do that, I'm out on LinkedIn Why? Because it's the best. All right, go to LinkedIn. You must have a Recon account by now. In other words, an account that is not associated to your real account, that is not connected to your real account, right? Your accounts are separate. I sure hope so. All right, I set a repeating task to add connections. And I do this frequently. It's about once a month. I go out to LinkedIn, I click the network button, I start hitting connect, 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 and then I'm going to give you a shortcut for that. All right, and it's easy to scrape because, well, I can't talk about that. It's against LinkedIn's term of service. In fact, it's impossible to scrape LinkedIn. All right, so number one, you build a decent profile. Be thorough, okay? This is not the time to be restrained in your personality or in yourself. You choose attributes about your fake persona that you think are going to be attractive to your target audience. Hint, hint, okay? Number two, you click My Network. You click My Network, you see something like this. All right, you see those connect buttons? This is the best part of LinkedIn. This is so good. Man, you guys are going to love this. All right, you scroll all the way down to fill up the page. And then you scroll all the way down again. And you scroll all the way down. LinkedIn does this Ajax thing where, like, as you keep scrolling, it keeps adding connections, right? Yeah, this guy here's laughing. He knows exactly what I'm going to do. All right, you keep filling the page, and you keep filling the page, and I'm talking like 1,000 of these things. You just scroll, take a sip of your coffee. This is great. All right, and then you open up Browser Dev Tools, you run that little chunk of JavaScript code. You connect to like 1,000 people. Connections start rolling in. You do a dance because you're awesome. All right, so LinkedIn, do it. Do it today. Domains. I aged my domains for a long time. Sometimes months, sometimes days, but mostly months. All right? And the reason being is because there are really good security controls like domain tools out there that will take into account the age of domains when you are sending your phishing campaign or on your callback domain, and that'll be a red flag. So get a hold of some good domains and start the aging process. Like a fine wine or a good cheese, you just want those aged for a good long time. They just taste better. Okay, reusable if possible. Some groups burn all the domains. They just burn them to the ground. And then they start over and they buy new domains or they go with expired domains, and that's great. And if that works and you're doing that, that's awesome. But I'm like, why ruin a good thing? If you have an awesome domain and it doesn't get caught, just keep using it. And so I go out and I check Palo Alto, I check Checkpoint, I check ForcePoint, I check McAfee, Blue Coat. I check those places to make sure that my domains are still healthy, because they're in the health category. Clientname-portal.com is not okay. Do not put your client name in the domain anymore. Why? Because at least the vast majority of clients that I test, they have services that send an email to security saying, Jason registered a domain that has your name on it, so block it. And then block him, and he's bad. So normally, if I want to put my client name anywhere, I will put it in the tertiary level domain, the third one over, not the secondary level, the tertiary level. So client.health-portal.com. I normally do that, but just FYI, be careful because search transparency logs can burn you on this. And if you use multiple clients tied to the same domain, this is generally a bad idea. So be very, very cautious with putting your client name in the domain. Much rather have domains that are more reusable, more widely open, and not associated directly to a client. Okay, C2 and phishing domains never overlap. This one is kind of obvious, but I need to state it. I might burn through 5 or 10 domains on an engagement. The payload's going one place, persistence is going another place, C2, short, long, going different places. So just keep those things separate. And then I submit domains. Like I said, I gave you this list: Palo Alto, Blue Coat, Checkpoint, McAfee. Those are kind of the top 4. And the magic categories that I'm shooting for is health, financial, and government. Well, why those 3? Okay, and in fact, I was working with one of my Fortune small number clients that told me about these magic 3 categories. And they said, these are the 3 that you want to get. If you can get in any one of those, you are golden. Well, why is that? Well, in fact, on Palo Alto's best practices website for SSL-based decryption, their number 1 recommendation is do not decrypt health, finance, government, military, and shopping. Well, why would that be? HIPAA, PII, PAN data, nobody wants to see that. You certainly want your Palo Alto inside your PCI scope. You don't want, defenders don't want to be anywhere near that. Audit doesn't want to be anywhere near that. So all that stuff gets left encrypted, and that's good, Like I said, healthy domains, we like that. All right, tools. I'm not going to get too much into tools, but I will give you this slide. And of course, I will make these slides available on Twitter, so you can take pictures, or you can just follow me on Twitter, and I'll drop them out there. Tools for passive recon: Hardcider, that was made by Jason Ashton at TrustSec. Amass for certificate transparency. I use a tool that I wrote, sh-parse. PyMeta is good for searching metadata. GitHub searching with Trufflehog or Repo Scanner, or you can just send an @ request to Hacking LZ. He's the person who knows, like, you just find anything on GitHub, so feel free to hit him up. And then authenticated LinkedIn scraping. For content, you could use LinkedIn there, and then Google Dorks for everything else. And these are some of my favorite Google Dorks. I love these. The top one, you're looking for Amazon, you're looking for, Pastebin, things like that. The bottom one is my favorite, because service desk people and help desk people generally hate their job, and so they want out as soon as possible. They're just going to litter their profile with all kinds of awesome information. So definitely one of my favorites. Breach data. Breach data is a treasure trove of information. The email format, the password format, new user passwords. I group these by count and then throw them in the report. Very, very helpful. And if you're not sure where to get started, if you haven't gone down this road, there are people in the place where I work. I'm not sure if Hans is here, but he has done a tremendous, it's incredible what that guy's done with password breach data and cracking, stuff like that. It is very, very useful to a red teaming organization to have that kind of data. So if you're not sure where to go, well, there's a... I'll get you started. Don't say I never did anything good for you. All right. External. Now we start getting to fun stuff, right? Core principles on the external, just a little bit. I always root Active Directory from the external perspective, never internal, and always through a VPN. If you get internal access, if I get internal access, this is my methodology, not yours. If I get internal access, I do not root Active Directory, with one exception. That might be curb root, which is going to throw a different event ID, 4771, as opposed to 4624 in the log. Don't quote me on that, but I do know that Kerberos brooding is a different event ID than like NTLM brooding or things like that. So that is kind of a difference, and it's still a reasonably new technique. Otherwise, I do not brood Active Directory from the internal perspective. Number two, and your mileage is going to vary on this one. Maybe you're a web app genius, and that's awesome. But generally speaking, from a consultant's perspective, when I'm on limited time, web apps are not necessarily my focus. I will look at your web apps. However, it's not from a web app testing perspective. At TrustSec, we have an amazing group of web app testers, and that's all they do. They don't do red teaming. And what I might do is bring in somebody with that specialty onto the red team, at least for that engagement, to look at those web apps, but it's not necessarily my specialty because they've grown extremely complex in my opinion. So not necessarily the thing that I'm most gravitating towards. And I do make liberal use of credential stuffing. If you're not familiar with that, we're back to password breach data. Get a hold of those credentials and start trying them. I tried one of my targets. This was on an assessment 2 weeks ago. I went and took their brand name. It was a popular brand name, and grabbed the credentials from my password breach store and threw them at their website. 350 valid credentials, just like that. So it does work very, very well. Active Recon. These are how I do it. Aquatone, DirSearch, Nmap, typical tools that you would use in a red team engagement. But just to understand, and thanks to, I think Scott pointed this out, for like the Nmap user agent, that can bite you. Because if you didn't know this, and I didn't know this until a little while ago, Nmap has its own user agent, and it has Nmap in the user agent. So talk about getting blocked right away. You can actually change that with a script parameter. If you use, I don't know, nah, you can't see it, but if it's dash script args, and then you can paste in the user agent that you want to see. And if you're interested, I wrapped all this into a tool that I use on my engagements called Initial Recon. It fires a mass, it fires a LinkedIn scraper, it fires metadata scraper, it fires all that stuff. And the code sections are up there if you want to go out and get them on GitHub. It's helpful. At least I think it's helpful. It's good for my methodology. It might not work for you. If you don't have something like this, it'll be a good thing to get you started. And then lastly, on the external part, NTLM brooding is still super hot. Office 365, Exchange, Skype, Link. A good place for testing what a client has is testconnectivity.microsoft.com. Otherwise, I will go out to outlook.microsoft.com, put in admin at target.com, and I'll get redirected to whatever their ADFS instance is, and that's always really helpful. Speaking of ADFS, these links were dropped at Troopers 19. These are some less obvious sources for NTLM brooding. So if you go to like adfs.target.com, and those are valid URLs, so that ADFS is a valid domain taking you to an ADFS instance. Those URIs, I'm laser pointing at my screen, Those URIs at the very bottom are open NTLM portals. So you can send your brute force attacks there. Very, very helpful. Social engineering, because everyone loves Bob. Core principles in social engineering, phishing. This is how I get around Proofpoint. In fact, Proofpoint, bite my tongue, hold on. Proofpoint is good. It's probably very, very good at stopping a lot of spam. But if you are going to be targeted, and this is true of a lot of controls, right? You know, as red teamers, we understand this. I never, as much as I dog on like antivirus, I never tell my clients to uninstall it because it serves a very, very good purpose, which is blocking like commodity malware, commodity ransomware, that kind of stuff. It does serve a good purpose. Proofpoint serves a good purpose. It just doesn't serve the purpose when I'm sending the email. And here's how that works. You send five emails max at a time. All be CC'd, works great, with 15 minutes in between sends, and I send from Office 365. A little caveat there, when you log into Office 365 to send your phish, the IP that you are connecting from gets put into the headers of that message. So be sure you are connecting from a VPN tunnel, okay? Send links, not attachments. You do those things, and you just kind of take it slow. You're not blasting out 100 emails at a time. You're not going to have any worries about Proofpoint. I lead off with my latest tradecraft, and then I downgrade as I get a feel for the target environment. Okay, so if you have like all custom C2 and you're just the shiz, you're all this hot stuff, but you know there's like PowerShell version 2 in the environment, don't necessarily burn all the stuff that you spend a lot of time writing. Okay, adjust your attack path to the maturity of the client. All right, because if you're so far ahead of them, you might be giving them things that they can't necessarily remediate, at least not in any meaningful fashion, if they even understand it. So point being is adjust turn that dial back, I guess, if you will, to compensate for their sensitivity. And eventually, your clients will outpace you. And you'll be like, shoot, I gave you everything I had, and you caught me. I fished and I fished and I fished, and you caught me. And that's kind of a good place for them to be. All right, and once again, eventually pivot to assume breach. I do this about 50% of the way through the engagement time. If it's a 6-week engagement, it'll generally be about 2.5 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, maybe 2 weeks going into that, just because that provides better value. It provides better value for the client, and you know, if you're done evaluating the perimeter, then you're done evaluating the perimeter. So time to move on. Infrastructure automation. Automation is getting to be, or I should say infrastructure, building it up and tearing it down is getting to be a pain, especially when you need different servers for everything, and whether you're doing AWS or whether you're doing Azure, whether you're doing on-prem. What I do is I use Ansible. If you follow me on Twitter for any length of time, you know I'm kind of an Ansible junkie. I just gave a class pretty much on Ansible. It's a ton of fun. But what Ansible is, just really brief primer. It's an open source platform put out by Red Hat, maintained by Red Hat, that gives you really solid configuration management and application deployment purposes. It uses YAML files. It's really easy to get into. Even if you've never coded, you're not even coding in YAML. You're just like typing in YAML. It's really straightforward. There's no agent. It's totally agentless. You need SSH and Python. That's it. If you can get Python on the target, you don't even have to have Python on the target. You can use Ansible to install Python on the target, which is fantastic. And then modules make up the functionality. So, for example, these are some tasks that are inside my Create C2 Server playbook. So the name of the task, cloning a packet, installing a packet, cloning carbon copy, et cetera, et cetera. The modules that we're using, so in this case, the module is called git, command, and then git. I'm calling the git module twice. And then I'm passing the arguments. It's actually really straightforward. And then once you have all that put together, you run it inside a playbook. So in this case, I'm running the new C2 server playbook against the host file, and it goes out and it builds all my stuff. Ansible is multi-threaded, so you can run this against 5 C2 servers at once, and they all get built out the exact same way to the desired state configuration that you're looking for. Really good tool. If you want to geek out about that, I'll be happy to do that with you. And then macros and attachments for sending payloads. Safe payloads, generally speaking, a modified Cactus Torch is reasonably safe in terms of getting you in the door if you're looking to get code execution immediately. Otherwise, safer might be registry-only mods. So, for example, if you're looking to land with like persistence or something along those lines, registry key mods are generally very safe. We have yet to be caught yet on that, at least as far as I know. VBA stomping and Evil Clippy, the Walmart folks, they did a great job. Harold and his team did a great job on this. Evil Clippy, the Outflank guys, I know this is Stan's work primarily. Fantastic tools that we all use that are really good in terms of making those macros even more evil and less detectable, and that's what we want. And then lastly, template injection, which I'm a huge fan of. Template injection is great because you can actually send a docx in the door, and then when the user opens that docx, it goes out and pulls in the docm or the .gif or whatever, and it all works great. Okay, so really that evil template.gif is just a docm that's hosting on my web server. It pulls the template in, the user gets prompted, they click enable content, and then you get your shell or your RC or whatever it is you're looking for. All right, Azure Information Protection, Advar and Hans gave a fantastic talk on this yesterday. Leverages Office 365's RMS to encrypt the Office document to specific recipients, which is really cool. It's impossible for defenders and sandboxes to evaluate without the user's credentials. You need to read that again. When you send an AIP encrypted document and it reaches their environment and the user's like, this is spam, and they forward it, if they can, if you haven't marked the do not forward box. If they forward it over to security's gonna open it, and they're gonna be like, I can't open this, it's encrypted, I need your password. And the user's gonna be like, I'm never supposed to give you my password. And security's gonna be like, but I need your password, and it's gonna freak out, it's great. Does not require your target to have Office 365. You can send this to a Gmail account, and they'll just get prompted to do an installation. Here's what it looks like. You install the Azure Information Protection agent. You go out to protect it. You select the email address, your target's email address. Sorry, that's permissions. Can you guys even see that? Yeah, you can. Heck yeah, you can. You select the permissions, in this case, view only. You put in the target's email address, and then if you're feeling especially naughty, you specify an expiration, which is just great. You know, because like if you only want that fish to be live for 24 hours, then you can just put in 24 hours and send it to them, and after 24 hours, poof, it's gone. It's like that Mission Impossible stuff. Self-destructs. All right, so Azure Information Protection. Watch this talk. I got a link in there right for it. This talk happened yesterday. Those guys did a fantastic job. And then on the internal side, this is really where it gets fun, right? Core principles on the internal. On a red team, this is what I'm prioritizing. Once I get access into the target environment, I'm not just mass mimikatzing everything. All right? As fun as that is. I mean, who isn't like creds just raining back in, okay? But seriously though, cookies, bookmarks, file shares, SharePoint. Remember, the ability to slow down. What are you doing with this step? You're gaining valuable knowledge about the target's environment. Okay, you're not just spraying and praying. You're looking for things that are of value, because how many times on red teams have you found documents that have credentials, documents that have network diagrams, documents that have sensitive data, open file shares that have sensitive data? Spend the time in that due diligence. You might be able to achieve the trophies just with that. You don't necessarily have to be moving laterally. And why move laterally if you don't have to? That's one of the noisiest things you could do in the target network. So if you have the right access to those data stores, use that access and accomplish the goal, because that's what an attacker would do. At least that's what I would do if I was the attacker, all right? Curb roasting, I love it, but I got to dial it back. Okay, you got to pull the reins back on a curb roast. If you're just firing get users SPNs, all right, from Empacket, then what's happening is you're sending those events to Active Directory, a ton of them, and if the defender's on top of it, they've written a threshold alert. So anything more than, I don't know what, 4 or 5, a day, if ever. So in my case, generally speaking, I'll start out no more than 1 an hour. And that's after doing research on the account. Okay, now this is obviously assuming credential access. Okay, but you're doing the research on the account to see if it's even a viable target. All right, and when I choose curb roast, IDs to curb roast, I'm not going for domain admin. Okay, true story. I was curb roasting user accounts, and actually I shouldn't say it. I was doing reconnaissance against user accounts that had service principal names, and it was like all the account names were like SVC underscore, every single one. And then there was one that was John Smith, like J Smith, right? And in the description it said InfoSec. Come on, that's like. And so I sent an email to my contact. I'm like, this is a honeypot. He's like, yeah. Right. All right, so I was actually chatting with a friend of mine about this last night, about how to do like curb roast deception. Make 20 accounts and make them all with different user IDs. And then if you want to be really evil, in your 20 fake accounts that you have disabled with, or that you have enabled with ridiculously long passwords that will never crack, go ahead and make your J Smith user account. Because the attacker's going to show up and be like, that's honeypot, I'm not going to grab that one. And they're going to grab the rest of them. That's like pure evil. But this is a red team talk. Shoot. Okay. I do purple teams too. It's fun. All right. Initial landing callback of 5 to 30 minutes, depending on the time that I have and the sophistication of the target. Okay. So there are some times when it is fine to just throw the barn doors open, so to speak, and like go full interactive mode in your beacon. Okay, but that's after you've done a little bit of analysis. That's after you've had your shell for a little bit, and you know, maybe you've downloaded some stuff, you've taken your time for a day or two. It's not a big deal. Slow down, and then once you figured out that they're not catching on to your C2, then yeah, full interactive, because that's the best. All right. I test all my commands in my lab before firing live, at least as much as I can. Okay, just a little bit of a word about my lab. I went out to eBay, I bought a Dell R710, $500. Okay, we have an MSDN license, which I imagine a lot of you probably do, and I went out and I built full Active Directory lab. Okay, I installed the fantastic, the one and only Splunk threat hunting app by Olaf, Sysmon, and Windows Defender, and I configured all this, and it's I cannot tell you the amount of times that I have used my lab on an engagement to produce better results. Say, for example, this. I hope you guys can see that. So this is my, shoot. That's not helping. Nope. All right. You just have to take my word for it. So this is all the Windows systems in my environment. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at the Sysmon event logs to see which processes are establishing connections out to the internet and on what frequency. Well, why would this be useful? Because as a red teamer, if I can get into one of those processes, well, that's more real looking, right? And so do that. Take that step of investing in the Splunk license. Seriously, all you have to do is go out to Splunk's website and request the developer license, right? The free license is 500 megs. The developer license is 10 gigs a day, and they'll give it to you because Splunk's awesome like that. Okay, so go out there, request that license. It's valid for 6 months, and then you can import all the stuff and do your own research on this because this is what the defense is seeing. And once you know what the defense is seeing, you know how to manipulate it, okay? You know how to work around it, and then you know how to help them with it. All right, tools, let's get into a little bit of tooling. On a red team, okay, so I'm gonna divide the room, all right? Brace yourself. This is what I almost never use on a red team. Crack map exec, as much as I love it. Marcello, you're awesome, okay? I love it. Internal brooding, like I said, I don't do it. Kerbrute might be an exception there if I think their defense is not gonna catch that. PowerSploit, I generally do not run much for PowerShell unless it's something that I've wrote that I know from a sysadmin perspective is relatively inert. For example, querying Active Directory, I'm not going to use PowerView. I will do something that I've written myself. Okay. Tools that I sometimes use on a red team. Bloodhound, depending on the switches. Thank you to Scott and the Bloodhound crew for pulling me up to speed there and not getting caught. Metasploit auxiliary modules are still fantastic to run. Run slowly. Modified Mimikatz, and by the way, I don't mean like log on passwords. Please do not run that on your red team. Please don't do that. Please don't start flipping the WDigest keys. Don't do that. You know, just kind of pull back the reins on that because Mimikatz has so much more to offer than just log on passwords. Carlos gave an incredible 2-day training on that, just on Mimikatz. It's like Mimikatz and Kekio, that's all it was. Okay, and then Cobalt Strike, obviously I'm not running anything stock. Everything is going to be all modified malleable profiles, things like that. Okay, and when I modify, just FYI, when I modify my Cobalt Strike profile, I go out to Raf's blog and I grab every single attribute that I have and modify it, every single one. Okay, so I will go out to I will make an authenticated call out to a service that I sign up for. Okay, so like me personally, I like health. So for example, like an old health insurance provider, something like that I might still have an account for. Fire up Burp, grab all that traffic, and then I configure the gets, the posts, the stagers, all to look very, very close to that. I do not rely on automated tools for that. I like handcrafted, artisanal, farm-to-table, malleable profiles that way. So that's how I like to do it. Okay, and then what I always use. All right, on pretty much every engagement, I'm going to be using these things. All right, I'm going to be using a SOX proxy. I'm going to be using proxy chains. I'm going to be using LDAP search, Kerberos manipulation, and literally anything from Durkheim. Okay, however, understand that those tools are going to be modified. All right, even in Packet. In Packet is fantastic. In Packet is one of my favorite toolkits of all time. I just love it. Okay, but I will still modify it. Why? Because the defense can see this stuff. All right, they can actually see the parent process chain. When I fire wmy-exec, that is what they're seeing on the command line. They're seeing cmd.exe/Q/c echo blah, 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 and it just looks bad. Right? It looks like somebody just barfed all over the command line. It's horrible. okay? And it sticks out like a sore thumb if you know what to look for, all right? And so what will I do? I'll go into the script, and I will modify the command switches. If I'm feeling adventurous, I'll try and modify the communications, okay? But I will change almost everything that I can change about the tool, all right? And here's the good news about that as a red teamer. What that will do is that will lead you to writing better detections for your own stuff. For example, I wrote this for Impacket. This is a Splunk query that detects, 3 or 4 Impacket tools that are just, stock. And that's great, because if I can detect it, then I know what I can change. And this is the Graeber loop that I think he blogged about or talked about, right? You write better detections so you know what you have to change so you can write better tools. All right, and that loop is priceless as a red teamer. If you're not doing that, if you're not modifying tools and then writing detections for that so you can change the tool, you're missing out on actually a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, because why do we do red teaming? It's a puzzle, right? Why do blue teamers blue? Well, it's a puzzle. We like to solve puzzles. All right, and this is a really fun puzzle and a really fun challenge to solve. So I encourage you to give it a shot. Okay, even if you're low privilege on a target, there's still some awesome stuff that you can do. That involves Mimikatz. Okay, if you're reasonably certain that you're not going to get caught, you can run Mimikatz. It's not going to target LSAS because you're not running logon passwords. What you are running is DPAPI to hit the Chrome process. Okay, so you make a copy of the login data because that's where the plain text, it's not plain text, it's DPAPI. So that's where the credentials are stored. You make a copy, and then you fire Mimikatz at it, and you can pull plain text credentials back. And when I say plain text, I should say decrypted. Okay, you pull those credentials back to the screen, and whatever the user has stored in Chrome, you now have access to. Sometimes it's a lot of personal stuff, all right, but sometimes it's a lot of corporate stuff, especially if they have Chrome rolled out. So it's very, very useful to do that, and you can do it as a low-privilege user. If you do not want to fire Mimikatz in the target's memory, it's understandable. You save off the cookies file or the login data's file. You acquire the user's password, and it's not too hard to do. You're all red teamers, right? My last engagement, my physical guy called up someone. It was just like, hey, I'm closing out help desk tickets. Do you have any open ones? And you're like, the printer. I hate the printer, blah, 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 blah. Just went on and on about the printer. And my guy was like, yeah, the printers are awful here. And, it's not a big deal, but I will take care of all that for you. I just have to verify you are who you say you are. Oh, yeah, sure, my password's, password 123. It's actually not that hard to get user's password. All right, follow steps here for decrypting the user DP API keys. And here is on Will's blog here. This was a ton of fun. I took his entire blog, went through it step by step, and learned a ton about DP API. I would strongly encourage you to do that. It's a worthwhile exercise to do. Okay, persistence and movement. For persistence, honestly, just really anything that's on Hexacorn's website. You just target HKCU, and there's all kinds of just fantastic stuff. Some of it is like really third-party specific. Some of it is fantastic that I love using. So if you're not an avid reader of Hexacorn, you should be. Common DLL hijacking. There's a fantastic talk that was given, I think this morning, about COM hijacking. It really went into the nuts and bolts of it, and even how to weaponize it with a COM proxy, and that's super important. Otherwise, you're going to foobar the environment. Procmon is your absolute best friend there. I even got a bullet point on COM proxy. Okay, so read the article from Leo. He did an incredible job on that. And we'll get you into proxying COM calls so you don't break the system. Because truthfully, COM hijacking, while it's cool and it's sexy, it can be a little risky to do on a target environment because you can trash the system if you pick the wrong class ID. So do your testing, use a COM proxy, and you're in a much safer position for weaponization. All right, and then blend in. And blending in, that's kind of more of an art than a science, right? So like this, and this is again where Splunk is amazing. So when we talk about blending in, so on a target system that's running the Splunk Universal Forward, I'm going to pick on Splunk for just a minute, okay? These sub-processes for Splunk, like Splunk-PowerShell and Splunk-ADMon and Splunk-NetMon, they run every minute. They pollute the security log with 4688s that kick off this starting process. Okay, so if this process is running all the time, it's kind of a safe bet. Kind of. It's safer than not doing. It's kind of a safe bet that if you take your naughty process and make it one of those processes that have probably been excluded from Splunk ingestion, then chances are you're a little bit safer. All right, you're not going to get caught, at least not as fast. Okay, and so now obviously I'm picking on Splunk here. You need admin rights to do this stuff. I mean, I'm not going to BS you. You know, in order to do this kind of stuff, you have to have an admin presence on the system because Splunk actually did a good job locking down the privileges on their target directory. But the point is that if you see processes running continuously on a target system, find one of those processes, stick your payload into that directory, rename it, or just call it that name in another directory. Because if they're excluding that process only by name and not by path, you're not going to get caught. All right, DLL hijacking. Still awesome. I sat down, I opened up Procmon, I just kind of monkeyed with Splunk for a little bit, and there's like a ton of calls. In the Splunk Universal Forwarder, where it says name not found, and you can just kind of, you know, pick your DLL poison and you can just mess with it. Again, you need admin rights for this, so I mean, it's, you know, your mileage may vary, but point being is that DLL hijacking is still very valid, and because it's not like cmd.exe calling this process, it's a legitimate process that's probably been whitelisted calling that, you're probably safer to do that. It's still difficult to detect. Okay, COM hijacking just a little bit. This was fun. The SI host process. Anyone know what the SI host process does? So the SI host process in Windows 7 and Windows 10 is responsible for looking at Windows activation status. And so when we were giving our Black Hat training 2 years ago, we were using a Windows 7 image, and I turned the students loose for the COM hijacking module. I'm like, all right, just find something awesome. Just go to town, because they get super excited and then they tell me what the class IDs are. It's great. Don't tell them that. Okay, so, but then what they do is they find something like this in the SI host process. Okay, name not found, and they stick a COM hijack in there. Well, what happens is that when Windows boots up, have you ever used the trial version of Windows? It always says in the lower right-hand corner, it says, you know, you must activate Windows, right? So a student came up to me all excited, and he's like, hey, I found this COM hijack in this process called SI host, and I don't really know what it does, but I don't get prompted to activate Windows anymore. I was like, are you kidding me? And I went over to his system, and sure enough, the message was gone. And so I was like, all right, well, it's Windows 7. You could hijack anything in Windows 7, right? So we changed over to Windows 10 for Black Hat a month ago. And I told the story, and a student comes up to me. He's like, still works in Windows 10. You still do it? And I was like, sweet, free Windows, right? You know, that's great. All right, so reporting. All right. Reporting communication. Okay. I'm going to divide the room a little bit because, once again, it's my methodology, all right? On status updates to clients, use caution, okay? This can bite you, and it has bitten us a lot, all right? And that's not to say that you should lie. I am not saying that. What I am saying is that you need to take a pulse on the client, because some clients are amazing and some want to win. And that's not the point of the engagement. It's not for the red team to win. It's not for the blue team to win, right? It's to test controls and make recommendations based on your findings, all right? It's not necessarily a game or a contest, all right? And so when I share status updates, if I think that my client is going to snipe me with this, I'll just be like, yeah, you know, we had a great week and ran some port scanning, and, you know, I've seen a lot of great controls, and, you know, normally it's just kind of a response that needs to go back to a committee or something like that. If I can tell the client loves security and wants, either wants us to find new attack paths or things like that, I'll tell them everything that we're doing. But the point being is that I use caution. I don't just go into it like, well, ran Mimikatz, got DA. And, you know, it's like, I don't necessarily do that. All right, in the report, that is where everything goes. Everything, and by everything, I mean everything, especially in the narrative. Because when working with clients and doing a red team, this is not, you know, your grandpa's pen test, where it's just like, okay, take findings, give to audit committee, I take the things, I give them to the engineer, and then the engineer does the, it's not that. Generally speaking, in doing red teams, you're working with interested clients, okay? And so in my experience, the findings are important, but they're important from an audit perspective. The security team wants the narrative. That's what they want, and they want everything spelled out, and they should. And I encourage security teams to actively break down every part of the engagement, because that's what should be done to develop better detections. And so do not withhold the secret sauce in the report. Please don't, okay? Gives everyone a black eye. Don't do it. All right, findings. I tell my clients this out of the gate every single time we kick off a red team. I'm not going to give you an SSL finding. Like, oh no, SSL version 2. I'm not going to do that. Okay, unless I actively exploit it somehow. All right, the findings that I'm going to give are probably going to be fewer in number, higher in quality. And what I mean by that is they are going to be directly connected to the path of exploitation or the path of compromise. Okay, so that's my personal methodology for giving findings. So far, it's worked very well. All right, and then consultants, this is the best. Seriously. If you're not doing this, if you're just shipping a report and then moving on, where's the nearest steakhouse? Okay, you're doing it wrong. All right, the best moments are when you follow up with the defense. And the way that I always end my last call with my client is I usually say something like this: I will never ever leave you hanging out on a limb. If you have questions about the report, if something isn't answered, if somebody puts your feet to the fire, they want to know how Jason did this or this, just call me. Call, text, signal, email, anything, and I will be there. I will get on the phone. We'll schedule a meeting. I've flown out to clients and done in-person debriefs. Point being is that always be there for the defense. And when you do that report readout and you start to see the light bulbs go on, there is no feeling. There is no shell that produces that kind of high. Okay, so do not withhold when it comes to giving the defense all of the goods that you have, because that's frankly what you're being paid to do. Okay? That's it, folks.